Shall I tell you about where this whole group of pictures came from?
Yes.
I was in Russia, so I went to Moscow and I started to see all these incredible faces, and I got a group of models and I hired a studio, and this whole collection is to do with those models in Russia. And so at the same time I was visiting a lot of different museums, and then I started reading a lot of Russian poetry.
Did you read Akhmatova?
I mean, I've become obsessed with Anna Akhmatova. I think the poem...
Yeah, well, quite right too.
The poem Requiem is one of the greatest things I've read.
Yeah.
In the fearful years of the Yezhov terror, I spent 17 months in prison queues in Leningrad. One day, somebody identified me. Beside me in the queue, there was a woman with blue lips. She had, of course, never heard of me, but she suddenly came out of that trance, so common to us all, and whispered in my ear. Everybody spoke in whispers there. "Can you describe this?" And I said, "Yes, I can." Her poetry, when I started to read it, I felt a real kinship with my work. I have this big urge to make paintings, which come out of trying to grapple with the time of which I live. You know, I don't live in the terrors, I haven't had to put up with any of the hardship that she had to put up with, but the yearning in a voice to create through something difficult. I felt such a connection with her. Poetry and music are two really important aspects of my work now. The precision of poetry, to try to distill the essence of something, and then music as the layering up of sounds and textures offers me a sort of model of a way to make paintings.
In my opinion, Saville is one of the greatest living figurative painters in the world, and has been for a long time. This is like pure freedom. You have, touches of Lucian Freud in there. You have Francis Bacon. You obviously have like Michelangelo, just the way she's constructing the faces and the proportions and the curvature and the contour of the neck, and then she's going through the paint that she has already laid down. It looks like she even had layers on this part of the canvas first, and then it appears that maybe she allows some of the paint to drip somehow, which is her completely relying on pure chance and seeing how it happens and then letting it be.
You know Michelangelo's sculptures where he has those sort of non-finito...
Yeah, at the very end of his life, yeah.
There's more reality in being able to see the transition from nature to culture than had that sculpture all been made perfectly. So I've taken that as a model and used abstract paint as the kind of raw nature and tried to build form off it in the same way and keep the two coexisting.
You know, the famous trope is that Michelangelo goes to Carrara and he sees a marble block and he sees within it the form which he's going to extract. And exactly in the way you've just said, at the end of his life, he kind of wants to make that a sort of rather failed extraction. The perfect image is recalcitrant. It kind of won't come out, or it wants to go back in again.
It works in the same way that a late Rembrandt portrait with the impasto paint. You have a knowledge, a subconscious knowledge of the material.
What I get, exactly as you've been describing when I'm looking at this, is this kind of unresolved dialogue, which is actually more real, between the kind of material out of which an image and a look literally emerges.
She's scraping, reapplying. I think of Gerhard Richter, and that's nice. See, this is in the moment. You can't make that up, man. That's nice. That's great.
So this is called Shasa, and she was an ecology student in Moscow, and just was an amazing model. And the reason it's called Shasa is a Hebrew word for shelter. And so if you look in her right eye, you can see me reflected. So it's a sort of self-portrait. I think it's the best eyeball I've ever painted, or it's the one that I've enjoyed painting most anyway.
It's rather beautiful, but it has this fantastic relationship, that passage of red, to the shadow under her jawline.
There's something about the activity of the materials on the surface of the canvas this time as opposed to her earlier works, where there's much more freedom engaged here. I mean, this is very sort of abstract expressionistic approach, married with her specialty as a realist painter. Not hyperrealism, but realism. I don't know how she's able to achieve this kind of balance in the work, because it's busy, but it's not exactly discordant. It's like a harmonious jazz ensemble that seem to work together just right.
Since I was a teenager, I first came across Philip Glass's music. I think the layering of his sounds, the build-up of human intensity, is what I feel a sort of relationship with my work, of like the building up of surface. Especially Études 16. When I listen to that piece of music, it's exactly what it felt like making these pictures. There's a sort of positive, hopeful tragedy to the sound.
She applies the paint to the canvas in the background. She's doing a lot of this sort of movement. And she's scraping up, reapplying. She may even put construction paper down and removing the paper to lift the paint. After the paint is dry, she creates an outline with pastel, because you can see she left it there, she didn't touch it. And then the way she approached the background is similar to the approach of the actual face itself. But these are highly abstract movements with the materials.
So when did those abstract marks happen?
I often start paintings on the floor, absolutely abstract, and just create a sensation in the paint.
Oh, so this is superimposed on it. You're literally...
Yeah, so I literally build the flesh on the top.
I see.
Because it's unexpected, it acts in contradiction to what I'm doing. So that creates more of a sort of nature fight.
Yeah.
So when you're on the floor, you can't really see what you're doing. So the nature of the paint is in charge. So it's a sort of battle between irrational and rational working.
You were kind of mesmerized actually by the heavy material of the paint itself, and it both resolves and refuses to resolve. The whole point about the free areas of paint, the more where, as you just said, the paint calls the shots, that's what gives it that profound animation and vitality.
You know, with the painting of virtual, I was like, okay, try and put everything you can into articulating what it feels like to live now. What is pictorial space in a time of panels of sort of floating realities on a computer screen?
I gotta figure that out, man. Because
the neck was very light, and I would normally have put that in, or I would have painted up the teeth.
It's like a print.
If you want a certain level of form, you spend most of the painting working out how to do it. So it takes you the whole journey just to learn what to do. So I always start 3 or 4 of the same sort of subject, and then my wrist gets looser because I kind of know the journey somewhat, so you take much more risk.
Yeah, she's definitely utilizing a lot of scraping and dragging with some kind of tool, as I said before when we looked at the other work. But you have to have a really confident hand to do something like that. So it hits just right.
I had written in my studio, like from the ancient world to the computer screen, like from the cave to the computer.
I also thought of the kind of floating eye of Horus.
Yeah,
of course.
exactly. I thought about that a lot.
Right way up is completely arbitrary in those hieroglyphic side-on images as well, which obviously mattered to Picasso too.
She's not going to become like a full-blown abstract painter anytime soon. Like, she's clearly not doing that. But she is taking great risk in incorporating abstract expressionistic techniques in her work. And it's beautiful. I mean, these works are gorgeous.
So this girl with really big eyes was a 16-year-old model who came, and she was trying to go to university. I've tried to use every possible way that I can use paint, from using raw linen with stains and dripping very watery paint, building right up to using thick oil bars, to widen the vocabulary of painting as much as I could. I used even things like weather.
Oh God, yes.
If it's misty, if it's raining, if there's light, you know, it sets this whole emotion. So I tried to work with that, this sort of poetic emotion, that what's the possibility I can get to.
Completely.
Now, in this piece, what's really key is the spotlight. So Jenny is definitely having a great time playing around with that. She even has the this sort of blue here. Now, see, what that does is it helps to create the illusion that it's not flat. She does that in everything. That's part of her, that's her thing. And she understands how to create volumetric forms. She's a master at that.
I still get such a thrill to be able to make a nose come out from this kind of crazy areas of abstract paint, to try and build that out and let it exist.
This is like the classic Jenny Saville. Like, you can see it really well here.
This is called Meridian, and so this was another model that I saw in Russia, and this is very based on Rembrandt paintings because of the shadow. There's this sort of half-light shadow.
It's brilliant. I love the ground too as well. You know, its refusal to be all closed up in verisimilitude all the way across.
They're not, strictly speaking, portraits of the personality. I'm trying to get to something that has a more universal feeling.
We're not just looking at this subject as a figure. It's deeper than that. This is an attempt to bring to the surface the internalized weight of a human being.
I feel like we're living in this very profound moment. I desperately want to make paintings that feel necessary. I want it to be part of everyday life that's really vital. Like when you read an amazing poem where the words explain what it feels like to be alive. I want painting to have that necessity of modern living.
Quite frankly, you wouldn't see works like this made in the 1600s. I mean, this work is really, no doubt, ensconced in contemporary art. And I think that is especially true with this work. It introduces a new language. Firstly, we should understand that what we're looking at is soft pastel and maybe black charcoal on linen canvas. She is making adjustments in the work. So you can see, it looks like she began here with the eyes, and she started to make the drawing there, but this, and she's just drawing. Look at this. She started the ear here, no. She started here, says no. And she started here, oh, that's just right. She's finding her way to where she needs to be. I wish I could make a work of art like this, man. This is great. She had the bottom of the chin here. Y'all see that? And then, you see what I'm talking about? Well, she raised it up just to get the composition right. But those mistakes became fortunes. It's no mistake. And she didn't erase anything. She doesn't erase. She leaves the marks right there because they were meant to be there. I'm telling you, there's a certain level of freedom that is at play here. She is dancing. She is dancing. I mean, this, and you can see her fingerprint here as she's touching it. I mean, she's having fun. Her and I are huge fans of the Michael Jordan documentary. Jenny Saville watched that documentary almost once a week. She said after working in the studio, she watched that Michael Jordan documentary. Imagine that. She says she likes to see examples of greatness at play and just being in that moment, in that zone. I could talk about art history, I could talk about theory and philosophy, but the one thing that's most important about art that most people don't quite get is it's about the spirit. People in the art world don't talk about that, but that's real. And this piece, this is the culmination of that. She's in it.